All right, we are live. This is the Seder Show. How's everybody doing? Nina, you could share that into the Accidental Talmudist forum. If you haven't joined the forum, you're missing chances to get notified of things. It's a beautiful group. Okay, you're live, you're sharing. Like to know who is tuning in, who's with us. Where are you tuning in from? Are you excited? Pesach is almost upon us. Are you excited, honey?
I'm excited. I really am excited.
It's easy, right? It's easy getting ready for Passover.
Well, without any guests, actually, it's a little bit easier.
But it's
just
not
going to be
easy.
our immediate family.
Rick Wise says shalom from Nashville. He's following us on YouTube. It says Gene Zeb Schechter's in the house. Come on, folks. What cities are in the house? What countries are in the house? What continents, what countries are in the house? We're so excited that you're with us.
Who's the closest to us and who's the farthest from us? So we're in Los Angeles,
Leslie
California.
Ann Landsberg, Plano, Texas.
Hey, Leslie.
Chris Carson, Long Beach, California. Will Chris be the closest?
Okay, so you're one of the closest. Yep.
Will Chris be the closest? We shall see. My friends, there has not been a Seder like the one that we are, God willing, going to experience the day after tomorrow, right? Wednesday night is the first Seder. And there has not been a Seder like the Seder that we're going to have Wednesday night.
Since the very first Seder.
Since the very first Seder.
So those of you who are thinking, we're stuck at home, we can't go to our relatives, or can't have anybody over
Sydney,
to our
Australia
house.
in the house.
Esther Goldie, you may be the
Beautiful.
farthest. So anyway, for those who are thinking like it's so weird, we're just going to be stuck inside the home, we're not going to be going to our friends, we're not going to have anybody over, but that's actually the way Seder Passover originally started.
The original Seder, my friends.
Hey, Deborah Renee Hazelwood.
We were in our homes. We weren't having big groups. Each family was in its own home, hunkering down.
Just like now.
Outside. Deadly plague. There was the plague of the firstborn happening outside during the night of the first Seder in Egypt. Everyone huddled at home. And unlike the first Seder, when there was no phone, no Zoom, no Skype, no WhatsApp, no ability to communicate with the people in the other homes, it was just fully closed in. And what an opportunity. What an opportunity we have this year at the, gosh, I don't have the number, but I think it's like the 3,338th Seder.
If you know the number of Seder this is, please let us know. I mean,
it's something like that.
I just saw somebody, it disappeared, but I think there's somebody here from India.
India's in the house.
Geography is not my strong suit.
Fantastic. Rick Weiss says, when do we eat should be required to
now
watch.
The party can begin. We have Emma and Wanda Parrots in the house. So we're looking for who's the closest. So far, Emma and Wanda, you're the closest. Oh, Valley Village. Gene Zeb Schechter, that's pretty close too.
All right, so since, we wouldn't have done this ourselves, but since Rick Wise mentioned it in the comments, yes, if you really want to get ready for the Seder, you should watch When Do We Eat, available on iTunes, Amazon Prime, Google Play, all major platforms. You can find out DVD. You can find out at whendoweeat.com.
That is our movie.
We wrote it together. I directed it. And it's about a Passover Seder, a fully crazy Passover Seder, completely grounded in Torah and Hasidus. So it's an amazing movie. We highly recommend you watch it if you haven't seen it. And if you have seen it, you already know you need to see it again because everybody watches it every year. This is that time of year.
We've got Mariano from Mexico. Wilson Tatey, I believe, is from South Africa. We've got people from all over. Stephanie Pink Mama Frieden.
All right, now listen, we've got a lot to cover.
Yes.
We are going to help you make your Seder fun and meaningful, whether you have one person or 10, whatever your number, the family, whatever number of people you're going to have. We're going to share with you today some tips that are going to make your Seder exceptional and memorable. Now, it's already going to be memorable. Obviously, this is the Kavod Seder. Right. What does Kavod mean? In Hebrew, it means honor and glory. This is an opportunity. Right now,
let's make sure, you're not talking about metaphorically.
Literally, the word kavod in Hebrew means honor or glory. Who is honored, our sages teach? One who honors others. This opportunity to have a full stop in everything that we're doing. There has never been a Seder like this in our lifetimes, and it is pregnant with opportunity to honor God, to thank the Creator, and to honor our families. I mean, it's amazing what we can do with this Seder. Now, I want to say a word about Zoom. I know that a lot of people are planning to do Zoom Seders. If that's your practice, if that's your observance, beautiful, that's going to be spectacular. Now, some people are not going to do that for halachic reasons. We personally, we're Orthodox, we're not going to be turning on screens during the holiday. But it is a beautiful idea, even if you're not having screens on during the holiday, to do a Zoom connection before the holiday starts. So whether you're having a Zoom Seder or not, you can have a Zoom before the Seder, before nightfall on Wednesday.
With the people that you would normally be having a Seder with.
That's a beautiful thing to do.
And you can kind of trade recipe, or let's make sure we're using the same recipe, or let's make sure we're doing the same thing at the same time, or some way to feel connected with those that you're not actually with.
Now, I was not being facetious at all when I said we haven't had a Seder like this one since the first Seder, when we were all hunkering down in our homes, afraid of the plague of the firstborn that was going on outside. It's very important to understand that the Jewish calendar, the Jewish year, is always cyclical, always cyclical. And so, this energy that was there on the 15th of Nisan, when the Jews experienced the miraculous exodus from Egypt, the miraculous redemption from slavery in Egypt, that energy is available on the 15th of Nisan every year. Every year. And so we don't get together just to tell a story about something that happened to us in the past. We get together to celebrate the way that God will help us redeem ourselves from slavery. That possibility of redemption is available every year. And on Wednesday night, my friends, redemption is available for you and me.
I just want to respond to something. I think it was Hannah Leslie that said, I don't want to mess it up. Can you scroll just to see the previous one?
What is it?
There we go. Yeah. Leslie Ann Landsberg. How do you suggest that happen?
I am a senior, totally alone.
I'm a senior, single, and totally alone. Hannah Leslie, you are not alone in being alone for the Seder. And I want to share a story that really inspired me. So the great Lubavitcher Rebbe, probably the most important figure in Jewish life in a millennia. We have his picture on our wall here. I don't know if you could see it. Anyway, great Jewish leader with thousands and thousands and thousands of followers. And so he and his wife were married for 60 years. They were never blessed with children. And every Shabbos, they spent just the two of them. Shabbos dinner, Shabbos lunch, just the two of them. They never had guests. They never were guests.
You can imagine that the Rebbe was surrounded by people all week.
So much to the Jewish people.
And it was very private for him every Shabbos.
Their Shabbat was just the two of them. And when the rabbi's wife died, Chaim Mushka Schneerson, after she died of blessed memory, let me backtrack. They had every Shabbos, just the two of them, and they had every Seder, just the two of them. And after his wife died, everybody was saying, well, where's he going to go for Seder this year? And he was alone. He spent the last Seders of his life alone, just him, okay? So you may think you're old, single, and alone, and so was the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he chose to do it all by himself. He could have been embraced into any number of families. He could have been in a Seder of 10, 100, 1,000 people. And he chose to do it alone. And people have wondered, why? Why would he choose to do it alone? And Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, a great rabbi, I think in the New York area, an incredibly gifted speaker. He grew up in the world of Chabad, and he was 15 years old. And when he heard this story, the Rebbe's having Seder all by himself this year, and it was so sad to him. Like, wow, it kind of made him sad. He never understood why. And it wasn't until years later that when somebody, Hannah Leslie, like you, asked him, how am I going to have a meaningful Seder? I'm all alone. Is that even really a Seder? And he realized the reason the Rebbe had Seder alone is so that when people like you, Hannah Leslie, and anybody else who may be watching thinks, well, I'm doing Seder alone, it's so pathetic. Well, he did it alone. So it's obviously not pathetic. It's obviously very meaningful. And maybe that's exactly the reason he did it, to inspire those who feel lonely. And you can be alone, and it doesn't mean you have to be lonely, and it doesn't mean you have to feel less than any other Seder.
Now, let's get started with practical, hands-on tips to make this Seder not just meaningful, but possibly the most important Seder you've ever had in your life. Here is a practice that we have done for years. I'm going to be doing it again this year. It is incredibly personally meaningful to me, and it has been meaningful to everyone that we have shared it with. And this is the perfect time to start thinking about it. So as I said, the time of Seder is a time of redemption, and the energy, the spiritual energy of redemption, which was available to our ancestors 3,300 years ago, is available on the night of the 15th of Nisan, on Wednesday night. So we have a possibility of being freed from slavery on that night. Now, how many of us are toiling in the fields, harvesting hay and creating mortar and building bricks and pyramids for a pharaoh in Egypt? Nobody. But how many of us are enslaved to a pattern of behavior that is self-destructive, that we know is wrong, that we've been trying to break free of for years, that we've claimed we were going to break free of for years, and we keep not doing it? We keep failing and breaking free of that destructive behavior. It could be smoking. It could be anger. It could be being too passive and not standing up for yourself. It could be a quickness to impatience and annoyance. It could be a procrastination. You could know that you're in this world. You have a mission. There's a piece of art or a piece of engineering or a piece of math or a company that needs to be created, or a way of being service to others. And you know you need to do these things. Whatever it is, you've been enslaved to not getting it done, right? You've been enslaved to that pattern of behavior and you haven't broken out. My friends, that is your Pharaoh. You are enslaved to that Pharaoh. And you will not break free of that Pharaoh until you cry out for help. So, how do we do this? Before the Seder, like today, Monday, and tomorrow, you figure out for yourself. You probably already know, as you're listening to me talk, what your Pharaoh is. If you're not sure, so you introspect a little bit, you figure it out. What's my Pharaoh? What do I need help breaking free of? Before the Seder, you write down on a piece of paper that Pharaoh, what it is, that pattern of behavior that has enslaved you and that you haven't been able to break free of. You don't show that piece of paper to anybody. This is personal. This is not for anyone else to see. You write it down before the Seder begins, before we light the candles for Yom Tov, before the holiday officially sets in. We take that piece of paper and we privately burn it. If you've got a fireplace, you could throw it in the fire, nice. If not, ashtray, lighter, match, whatever. You burn up that piece of paper. And as it burns, you say, God, please help me. Please help me break free of Pharaoh. I need help. I haven't been able to do it on my own. Now, when we're going through the Haggadah, the script of the Passover Seder, and over again, we encounter the word Pharaoh. We realize that we're not just talking about a story that happened 3,300 years ago. We're talking about a Pharaoh that we're going to break free from today. Now, it will not happen overnight just because we asked. And we're going to come back around later in this talk to how counting the Omer for 7 weeks, which begins on the second night of Passover, is related to breaking free from Pharaoh.
So as we go, let us know if you have any questions. We'll be checking that.
Absolutely. All right, so shall I do the next tip?
Go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I finish a tip, you be ready with the tip. So then I could go look at the notes. All right, this is the next tip.
Wait, what?
Here's the next tip. Next tip. This is awesome. So often at a Seder, we're sitting in the dining room looking at an empty plate, thinking, oh man, we got about an hour, maybe 2 hours of these ceremonial rituals to do and reading the Haggadah, and we're reading one paragraph each, and oh my God, that guy reads so slow, and this is taking so long, and when do we eat? When do we eat? Here's how you break free of that. You don't have to do the Seder in the dining room.
People's brains are exploding.
You don't have to do it in the dining room.
Because it's hard sometimes to sit at the table, all the dishes are there, you're looking at the food, you're waiting.
Let me tell you something. A dining room, a table, chairs, that's not how people did Seders in the ancient world. Not at all. You set a nice dinner table, and later for the festive meal, you're going to go to the dining room for that.
Right.
But for the Seder, sit in the living room.
And you're supposed to recline anyway.
You're supposed to recline to the left.
Yeah.
Right? So you want to be on a couch. You want to be comfortable. Why do we recline on Passover? Because we're all princes and princesses. That's why. Nobility, royalty would recline at a meal. And all of us were a nation of priests, a nation of nobility. And so you do the Seder in the living room. You can even have some snacks on the table. That's okay.
Is
so
that
people
okay? I don't know if that's
Some
okay.
people say it's okay. I'm not sure.
That's okay.
I'm not sure if
I
halakhically
think
that's
if there's
okay.
kids, you could probably. But
Let the kids eat a little bit so they're not starving. But the point is, you're not sitting there staring at empty plates. You've got your Seder plate, you've got your cups of wine, and you're already in a frame of mind of talking and discussing and asking questions, which is what the Seder is all about. Talking, discussing, answering questions, asking more questions, and answering questions. That's what the Seder is about. And if you're rushing through that because you're so hungry, you can eat a snack earlier in the day like you're not so hungry, but move the Seder into the living room, recline, have the Hagaddahs ready, and be in a frame of mind for conversation, for a symposium, because that's what the Seder is modeled after, the symposia of old.
And I believe the Seder must start after sundown.
This is important.
Yeah.
We're telling you that there's an energy of redemption, an energy that can help us break free of our boundaries, break free of our enslavements. That energy is there on the 15th of Nisan. The 15th of Nisan begins at nightfall, wherever you are. If you're not sure what the candle lighting time for Passover is, it's easily found. Just Google it for your area, candle lighting times, and your city. You don't want to start the Seder early. I know people have a tradition to start it early.
Yeah, I've definitely been at Seders where it was started early for the kids or whatever, but it's really important to do it right. Now, you can do what we used to call a disco nap. Back when we were, younger and would go out on a Saturday
That's a
night
great
or
idea.
something, you take a nap a few hours earlier.
I know people think, but I'm preparing like crazy to get the Seder ready. But it's a
that's
smaller
true.
Seder this year.
That's true.
It's a smaller Seder this year.
Right.
But don't start too early. It's important that it's happening at night. It's after nightfall. That's when that
Right.
energy is there.
Sometimes the things, it may seem little, but you have to do it exactly right. And I want to share a story told to us by our dear friend Zipporah Bank, who may be watching, and if you are watching, Zipporah, pipe up. I think you are. Which is, and I think I'm getting the story right. So there was a woman who was a real skeptic, and loved to challenge. She was talking with an Orthodox rabbi, and things have to be done a certain way, especially in the Seder. Seder means order; it needs to be done in the right order. And she's like, "Well, does it really have to be exactly? I mean, that's so strict, and can't you kind of do what works for you, or adjust it, or something?" And she sent him an email challenging him with all these kind of questions, and she never received a response. And that kind of confirmed to her, like, rabbis don't pay attention, really made her even more angry. So she sent a follow-up email saying, "I sent you an email, Rabbi, asking you some important questions. You never answered. What's that all about?" And the rabbi responded, "No," and he said, "I never got your email, never got a previous email from you."
No, I sent you an answer. Right? I sent you an
Oh,
answer.
I'm sorry. Glad you're here. He said, "What are you talking about? I sent you an answer. Why didn't you get it?" She said, "I didn't get it. What email did you send it to?" And so he sent it to, Rachel Goldberg at gmail.com. She said, gmail.com? What are you talking about? Gmail.com. That's why I didn't get it. You just said gmail.com. You forgot the dot. Aha, he said. It seems like such a little thing, that dot. But if you don't have the dot in there, the email goes nowhere.
This is the year. We are all in need of a healing, my friends. Whether we have COVID-19 or not, we are all in need of a healing. The world is in need of a healing. This is a year to take the Seder just as seriously as we possibly can. So we want to light the candles, not around nightfall, but at nightfall. You want to do that, get that candle lighting time.
You go online.
Yeah, just Google candle lighting.
Hebcal, Hebcal.
Yeah, it's easy. Just Google candle lighting times in your city. And light the candles at that time. Now, every Haggadah has all the instructions that you need to follow the Seder. You could use that Maxwell House Haggadah.
Yeah,
You could use a Schick Haggadah. You want to get that Schick Haggadah? These are the ones that are used in When Do We Eat? It was actually republished not that long ago. And if you're blessed to have, it's probably a little bit too late now, but if you're blessed to have a nice Haggadah that you can use, it's nice. Yeah. This is the beautiful Schick Haggadah, and these illustrations.
They're just spectacular.
Appear in our movie. This is a very famous one for the Manish Tanah, the 4 questions, and this beautiful drawing comes to life in our movie in When Do We Eat? But all the instructions are there, and follow them. Follow them to the best of your ability, because it matters. Because that dot, without the dot in .com, that email's never getting there. And right now we're all trying to send a message to heaven saying, we get it. We get it. You sent us a plague so we would reset everything, reprioritize our values, figure out why we're here and what each of us has an individual mission, right? Each of us has an instrument to play in the Universal Symphony, and we have an opportunity to get in touch with that music and play it to the best of our ability.
And in terms of the food of the Seder, it's my understanding that the most important things are to tell the story.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell the story of the Exodus, and to eat matzah. So those
Do you want to bring the shmura?
Oh, yes.
We were going to have that.
Those are really the key things. If you're telling the story and eating the matzah, and you don't want to have the whole multiple course meal and brisket, etc., you don't have to do that. Keep it simple.
You don't need all the brisket and all that.
Simple.
That's nice. It's great to have these traditions, these family traditions. But it's the Seder is not the festive meal, right? The Seder is going through the Haggadah and reading all the Haggadah. And every time you encounter something in the Haggadah that doesn't make sense to you, fantastic! Ask your neighbor if you have one, or ask yourself if you're alone, why is this here? What does this mean? If you're not in a hurry, if you're discussing what the text means, then you're doing the Seder correctly. This is all about questions. And that's why when the Seder actually gets going, one of the first things that we do is we dip the vegetable, the spring vegetable, representing the spring, the spring planting, the spring plants, right? The parsley, we dip in the salt water. Why? Why do we do that? It's a prompt to the children so that they should ask, why are you doing that? That's the whole point of the parsley and the salt water, is so that the kids will ask, what are you doing? You've got to be asking questions. It's super important to ask questions at the Seder. Every time something is puzzling you, asking a question is doing the Seder. Very much. Interrupting each other, that is doing the Seder.
And if you're alone, ask yourself the question.
Yes, I just said that too. Now, regarding matzah. Okay, this is not possible for everybody. We understand not everybody has a kosher market in their city or in their town or available to them. If there's a Chabad, if you're Jewish and there's a Chabad anywhere near you, probably the Chabad rabbi can help you get shmura matzah. If possible, shmura matzah is great to get.
We're backwards or not?
We're not.
Okay. So be so careful with this. Don't break it, please.
Now matzah is matzah, but not really. What is different about shmura matzah, which is the matzah in this box that I'm going to treat so gently, so fragile?
I don't want to break it.
This is shmura matzah.
So this is handmade, I think in Israel.
What makes shmura matzah is 3 things. Number 1, it was watched very carefully from the time the grain was harvested. It was never allowed to come into contact with any moisture whatsoever so that it wouldn't leaven in any way.
The time the grain was
unexpected.
harvested?
Yes, it's kept guarded. Shmura, it's guarded.
So there's a
That's what
special
it means.
field just for this.
It's kept guarded. It's handmade,
Does it have to be from
not
Israel?
machine made. I don't know about that. But it's handmade, it's not machine made, and it's round. So if you can get...
Seders.
For the Seders.
Like, for the rest of Passover, we got the big, 5
Oh yeah, we'll be
box,
eating lots of
regular
the square matzah, making matzah pizza.
mass-produced, yeah.
We love that stuff.
Because this stuff is really expensive.
But if you can get shmura matzah for the Seder, it will make your Seder more special. Okay.
And if you can't, you can't.
If you can, you can't. That's the whole thing. Oh, here's another principle of a great and meaningful Seder. No matter how carefully you take notes from all these tips that Sal and Nina give you, no matter how well rehearsed you are, no matter how much you think it through, no matter how awesome your Haggadah is, that you carefully researched and put together from various sources and created your own family Haggadah, which we recommend, and it's a beautiful practice. It's a great thing to do. But no matter how much you do all of that planning, I'm telling you, something will go wrong. Something will go awry. Something unexpected will happen. It might be as simple as you were bored when you didn't expect to be bored. It might be as simple as you were intrigued when you didn't expect to be intrigued.
Or it might be,
Wine might get spilled on a white tablecloth. Wine might get spilled on a white dress. Something will go wrong. When it does, you say thank you. Thank you, God, for showing me that it's your plan, not my plan. In all things, it's his plan, not our plan. And that thing that went wrong, that's an opportunity that night to say, why did that thing go wrong? What am I supposed to learn from it? It's another opportunity for a question and answer session. My friends, you've got to have question and answer sessions. And that is why another beautiful practice that you can do at your Seder, if you've got, even with one person, and especially with 2 or more, every person at that Seder should bring an object that is meaningful to them. An object that is meaningful to them. Something like this began when people were bringing oranges onto Seders. Do you know about that?
Yeah.
It's an old story. Come on. It's an old story where somebody said, it was a feminist thing, where somebody said something insulting about women. And so it said something like a woman somewhere belongs like an orange on a Seder plate. So women brought oranges to their Seder plates because to them it represented their role in Jewish practice.
I'm sorry, I have to step in here. I think you're teaching something very dangerous. You don't want to add anything to the Seder plate.
Not to the Seder plate.
That's what they did. That's the whole point of the story.
Right, well that's a mistake.
Yeah.
My point is, bring an object that is personally meaningful
not for the Seder plate.
That is personally meaningful to you and put it on the Seder table, not on the plate. Of course not. In fact, you're in the dining room, right? So you're in the living room, right? So it's just on the coffee table there, Seder plate to one side, the matzah plate somewhere there, and then somewhere on that coffee table, an object that is personally meaningful to you. And naturally, at some point in the Seder, there will come an opportunity to say to somebody who's with you, hey, what does that mean to you? And then when they tell you why it's personally meaningful to them, they can then ask you, what is this object that I brought, which is personally meaningful to me, now that you've heard my story, what does that object mean to you?
The point is, you can have fun with it. You don't need to take the Seder and the Hagaddahs so seriously. Like once, years ago, do you remember we went to a haiku Seder? Okay?
Oh yeah, that was great.
And this family had made their own Haggadah, and they phrased everything as a haiku, and then people going around, and I think we were all kind of sitting outside. It was years ago, but everybody would try to say their part in a haiku. It was great. It was challenging. At the beginning, everybody's like, well, I'm not a poet, but by the end, people were really getting into it. So there's all kinds of ways to fulfill the mitzvah of telling the story and eating the matzah without being, necessarily rigid. I mean, if you like to have this, what you've always done, great. But you can also, mix it up and have fun.
Now, we mentioned that when the holiday begins, you want to do the candle lighting on time, at the appropriate candle lighting time. The next thing that's going to happen, not the very next thing, but pretty soon there's going to be a kiddush, right? So you're going to make a kiddush. You're going to sanctify the day by making a blessing over wine, right? So that's how we.
I think it's for various reasons. If wine doesn't work for you, grape juice, I think.
Oh, grape juice is fine, absolutely. And that's how we go into Shabbat, and that's how we go into holidays, right? We make the festival kiddush,
lighting the
and
candles.
we're going to make the Passover kiddush. Now, when we pour that wine, this is one of these important things. You want to be frum about this. You want to be religious about this. You want to be stringent. You want to be
How
machmir.
much wine?
The point is, you want to have a kiddush cup that holds at least 3.2 ounces, right? It can't be too small. It has to be a proper kiddush cup. And most people are just not accustomed to doing this. They don't overflow the cup, right? We just don't fill wine glasses that way. I mean, you put wine glass, you barely, you never even half fill a wine glass.
Right, if you go to a nice restaurant, you order like an expensive, glass of wine, they'll come with this huge glass. It's like such a little amount, it looks like. No,
and that's
we're not gonna do that.
because there's you're enjoying fine wine,
Right,
and it's
and
all about
your
wine
glass
tasting, and you want to swirl the wine in your glass.
Right, exactly.
Not so with a kiddush cup. The kiddush cup is all about abundance. And in the
Blessings.
in the same way that we always want to be generous with charity, with tzedakah, right? The appropriate way to live is always to put aside 10% of your net income. As soon as it comes in, we have a separate bank account for this called a Meiser account. Every time we make money, 10% of the net income goes into that account. It's set aside, and we're constantly giving it to charitable causes. You want to have a feeling of abundance. If there's an abundance flowing out of your home, there will be an abundance
Now
flowing
is a very good
into your
time
home.
to give to charity. Now, Passover time, and now coronavirus time.
Exactly.
Very
Very important.
to charity. Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of us are, having really tough times financially, but you can always give a little. Find the amount that makes sense for you to give, and make sure you set aside money for charity at this time. And you should do that right before Passover begins. Then when you make that kiddush, you need to fill that cup to the very brim, and so even a drop spills out. My cup overfloweth. You want an overflowing cup. That's very important. You can fill it just to the brim, because then you're going to pick it up to make the kiddush, and wine will invariably spill over the side.
Yeah, so make sure that you have,
Now that wine that spills over the side, you might have it like over a plate or something. So you have your hand, the cup, and then there's a plate underneath, and that some of that wine spills out over the side and falls down on that plate. And after you made kiddush and drank some wine, you might be tempted to take the wine in that plate and pour it back in the cup so it doesn't go to waste. No, no, no. That is the opposite of the whole concept of the cup overfloweth. He's giving us so many blessings, and the kiddush cup represents that. Overflow it, to understand that the abundance of blessings that we receive is more than we could ever thank God enough for. We receive more than we could ever thank Him enough for. And that is represented in the cup. Having made the kiddush, this is why you don't want too large a kiddush cup.
Well, no, there's a minimum that
You want to drink half the cup.
Right. So you have to drink at least half the cup. So
Right.
it's actually not that much. If the cup is 3.2 ounces,
Then it's no problem.
then you just have.
If you're a very large kiddush cup, it's more challenging.
Right. So
But
you don't
wanna
really need to drink more than an ounce and a half, really.
Right, but you want
A
to
little more than
drink
that.
more than half of the full kiddush cup. That's important. Okay.
Yeah, we were at a wonderful Seder a couple years ago, led by a really great rabbi, and and they were pouring big glasses of wine, and he just drank each one, and we could see as the night wore on, he was kind of getting a little louder and a little redder, and he just really drank every glass, the full glass of wine, poured it down.
That
inspiring.
is the way to do it. All right, I have a note here. Okay, so I said that you should each bring a symbol, something that's personally meaningful to you, to prompt the asking and telling of more questions. The 4 questions is going to be asked by the youngest person present, symbolizing the child. They may not be a child, but the youngest one present. And if you're doing it alone, so you're going to ask the 4 questions. Maybe you haven't done that in decades, but you are the one to ask the 4 questions. What an opportunity. What an opportunity. It's nice if you can sing it in Hebrew, but even if you sing it in Hebrew, make sure that you're actually asking the question, not just going through a ritual and then moving on.
And it's nice because let's say there's an older couple, let's say there's a couple in their 80s, and one of them is younger, and that one's going to do the 4 questions, and it must be kind of cool, like, to do the 4 questions. And you're never the younger if you're probably, they've been the youngest for 70 years.
And that is the moment to remember that asking questions, right? Not just because Sal said, hey, make sure we ask questions and answer questions. Ask questions because you're curious. Ask questions because a child is curious. And when did we grow up and become uncurious? Did that really happen to us? Because if that happened, this is the time to reverse that trend. We are curious people. We want to know more than we know right now. We realize we don't know that much, and we want to know more. And how are we going to know more? By talking and discussing and figuring out and seeing if we can figure something out together. That's what's really going on at this Seder, is that together we're going to figure out what all this is about. Now, there's a discussion of the 4 sons at the Seder, right? That's a big part of the Haggadah. The wise son, the wicked son, the simple son, and the one who does not know even how to ask, right? And then, of course, there's a tradition, more modern, to think there's also a 5th son, a 5th child. Who is the 5th child at the Seder? The one who didn't come to the Seder.
The one who doesn't even know there is a Seder.
The one who doesn't even know there is a Seder. And tragically, there are many Jews in the world today who are not going to be having a Seder the night after tomorrow, who may not even know that it's Passover. If you know such a person, reach out to them.
I wouldn't say many. I would say possibly most.
Oh, it's so sad. So if you have an opportunity to share that, hey, I'm so excited I'm having a Seder. What are you planning for yours? Are you planning to have a Seder? If not, you could really do it. This is your chance. It's amazing. I love doing a Seder. And just going through it will bring so many blessings into a person's life. Now, if you watch When Do We Eat, there's a bit of a joke there that one of the kids says, I can't believe you arranged it so that I would get the paragraph of the wicked child, right? And we used to make that joke at our Seders when we were kids. Whoever the wicked, the reading the paragraph of the wicked son, whoever that fell to, would be like, oh, you arranged it so that I would get the wicked son. Obviously, it's a random thing in the way that it falls out. But I learned something this year, beautiful, from Rabbi Gershon Schusterman. What does it say about the wicked son? The wicked son asks, what does this mean to you? To you and not to him. Had he been there when we were all redeemed from Egypt, he would have excluded himself from the Jewish people, and he would not have been redeemed. It sounds so negative and awful to say that a child would have been excluded and not redeemed with us because he's naughty. But what Rabbi Schusterman taught me, he says, you know what? Had he been there, he would not have been redeemed. Why? Because the exodus from Egypt happened before God appeared to all of us at Mount Sinai and gave us the 10 Commandments. When God appeared to us at Mount Sinai, we entered into a covenant between God and the Jewish people, which is eternal and binding on every Jew, no matter what, whether he's at a Seder or not at a Seder, whether he's wise or wicked, simple or doesn't know how to ask, it appertains to every single Jew. And so while one who excluded himself from the community might have been left out when we walked out of Egypt, after Sinai happened, nobody's left out. Nobody can be left out. There's no such thing as a Jew who becomes a non-Jew, a Jew who gets excluded from his people. It's never too late. There's always time to be redeemed and to join and to be part of the community. And so even one who feels like they've been apart for a long time, this is the night to come back and be welcome and welcomed.
Please let us know if you have any questions. We haven't seen the comments come up, so maybe
that happens after a while.
Right.
Yeah, there've
There
been a
might
lot
be all
of comments
kinds of
actually.
urgent questions.
Why don't you open your computer so you could actually see if there are questions that they're saying. I'll just keep talking a little bit more. Here's 2 nice questions that you can ask. You might want to write these down. These are nice questions that you can ask at the Seder. And this comes from JLI, the Jewish Learning Institute, who's put out a beautiful do-it-yourself Seder guide. And so one question that's beautiful that you can ask at the Seder, why celebrate an ancient freedom that was subsequently lost to further persecutions, right? We were redeemed from Egypt, but then we ended up under the heel of the Babylonians and the Greeks and the Romans, and we're still in the Roman exile. And we've been persecuted in Europe and in the Middle East and in Germany and so many times and places. So why celebrate that we were free then if it just led to also so many other troubles at other times? And the second question is, what would be the point of a wise and knowledgeable person repeating a very familiar story, right? Imagine you're in your 70s and you've been doing a Seder every year punctiliously, and you go through the whole Haggadah and you know the Haggadah by heart. Do you really need to do it again? You know it by heart. You learned it. What do we gain from going through the whole thing again? Okay.
So Ed Berg piped up. Hey, Ed. He says, our Seders at Chabad always have some finger food to keep everyone focused on the story, not our stomachs.
See? You can have the
Chabad
snack.
is doing it, it's kosher.
You can have the snack
Okay,
during the Seder. It's okay, so you're not just thinking about your grumbling stomach. All right, now we are actually running toward the end of the time we have allotted for this.
Sure.
We're going to keep looking for questions, but I have a beautiful thing for you, another thought. Now, when I was growing up, I'll be honest, the Seders that I went to, often the stuff after the meal got short shrift, right? Like we didn't do the two cups, there's 4 cups of wine at the Seder. 2 are before the festive meal and 2 are after the festive meal. There's a lot of storytelling to do after the meal, and especially there's the benching, right? Now, if you've been following AT Daily, you know that we've talked quite a bit about the fact that the blessings that we say before we eat are mandated to us by the rabbis. The blessing that we say after we eat is commanded directly by God in the Torah, right? You shall eat and be satisfied, and you shall bless the Lord your God for all the good that he has done for you. So the benching after the meal is actually even more important and more superior to the blessings that we say before the meal. And that's true of any meal, but even more when we're so attached to God and crying out to God for help and for redemption at the Seder. So after the meal, it's so important to do the benching. It's in the Haggadah to say the grace after the meals. And why is it more important? Because when we're hungry, people think about God, right? When we're in need, they're more likely to think about God.
I'm so hungry, please feed me.
But after we're satisfied and full, like, oh, I can't eat another bite, I'm good. That's when we're self-satisfied. We did good. We threw a good Seder. Everybody had a good time. So, we could just pat ourselves on the back. That's the moment. That's the moment where you have to be humble and thank God for all the blessings that we've just enjoyed.
Okay, a couple of questions. Eliza Abraham says, why is it okay to add to the Seder but not add an orange? It was my understanding that if no bone is available, 2 other foods can suffice. Couldn't one be an orange? I know that if no shank bone is available and others have the custom to use a chicken bone.
Or a chicken neck, like my Hungarian ancestors. Yes.
And I believe that for the karpas, maybe, for one of them, you could use any vegetable. In terms of a fruit, I don't know. I don't know if an orange can actually
I don't know that an orange is going to
substitute
substitute for a bone. That's a question you want to Google it. It won't be that hard to get an answer. And then we actually have 2 festival offerings are on the plate, right? Like the shank bone represents the Paschal lamb that we would roast, that we roasted in haste that night in Egypt. And then when the temple stood, a group of people would register for the Paschal lamb or the kid, the goat, and they would all have to agree that they were going to be together for that Seder. And then they would have to roast that meal, that goat or that lamb in its entirety, not break any bones. There were a lot of rules. But there would actually be an additional offering, the Chagiga, which is the festival offering, which is also offered up at the temple. The Paschal offering is eaten in its entirety by the people. The Chagiga offering, some of it is offered on the altar, and the rest is eaten by the people. And it's the Chagiga offering that symbolized by the egg, right? So we have the bone or the chicken neck or whatever is going to represent the Pesach offering, the lamb, and the egg symbolizing the Chagiga offering and the circle of life.
Suzanne Marcy Kachko says, what about my dear 12-step Jewish friends who have adopted Christianity because they were never shown the beauty of Judaism? That's a good question. I think first
Number
of
one,
all,
they're still Jews.
of course, they're still Jews, and if they're 12-steppers and they're Christians, they're obviously God-fearing, God-believing people. So
Yes.
focus on what you have in common. And honestly, like, it doesn't really matter what a Jew believes to a certain degree. We've got some
You're still a Jew.
some very some secular relatives, and I ran into a cousin who I hadn't seen for a long time, and I invited her and her husband for a Shabbos dinner. Great way to reconnect. And she said, "Oh, well, that's so sweet of you to invite, but her husband's an atheist, so he can't come." I'm thinking, I don't care what you guys believe. You can believe in God, not believe. You can still come to our Shabbos table and enjoy a good meal.
And they did.
No, they didn't.
Oh, I guess I'm thinking about somebody else.
They didn't.
They never came?
No, this just happened recently. And I didn't want to push it. I didn't want to say like, well, it doesn't matter. You should. I mean, I might kind of follow up, but it was striking
Listen, what
to
you
me
can
that the assumption was, well, because we don't believe what you believe, we can't celebrate this holiday. But that's a little misleading.
But you can, and I think very important when you talk about people who were turned off Judaism because it was boring and then found more meaning and fulfillment in some other path or tradition. It's a big tragedy, and it happened because the Judaism that they were exposed to was a very uninspiring form of Judaism. That's the real tragedy. We always like to make the joke and the metaphor that it's like somebody who never tried sushi, right? And then the first sushi that they tried was 3-day-old sushi from the supermarket. You know, that bad prepackaged sushi that sits on the shelf.
I once saw sushi at a gas station. There was like a little food area.
Right. So imagine like 3-day-old sushi from the supermarket and prepackaged. Somebody tastes that and says, oh, this is bad. Sushi's bad. But they never had like amazing, scrumptious, fresh sushi. They have no idea what sushi is. So people who've turned their backs on uninspiring, boring Judaism, that's the tragedy. They never got exposed to good, inspiring Judaism. And maybe this is the year that they will be exposed to beautiful, inspiring Judaism. It won't be at a communal Seder at your house, but maybe through the Zoom, maybe through sharing this video itself with them. Who knows? Maybe there's a possibility that wasn't available before. Now, before we sign off, we'll answer a couple more questions, but I just want to come back to the point I made earlier. If you're going to make this Seder personally meaningful by realizing before the Seder happens, what is the personal Pharaoh that I'm enslaved to, the destructive behavior that I have not been able to break free of. Everybody has one, right? Smoking, anger, passivity, impatience, procrastination, whatever it is for you. You know that you have to cry out for help to break free of it. Once you identify that Pharaoh, when you go through the Haggadah, through the Seder, every time you encounter the word Pharaoh, you're thinking personally, this is the Pharaoh that I'm breaking free of, this destructive behavior that I'm going to break free of with God's help. I'm going to ask for help, and I'm going to get that help. Now, just because you prayed for help and understood what your Pharaoh is and thought about that Pharaoh during the Seder doesn't mean that the next day, which is the first day where you're going to try to break free of that behavior, that it's automatically going to happen. And that's why our sages included an unbelievable wisdom tradition, which is that on the second night of Passover, at the second Seder, at the end of the second Seder, we begin counting the Omer. We count 7 weeks of days, 49 days, as we march from Passover to Shavuos, which commemorates the revelation of God at Mount Sinai. We count 7 days. Each day we count. Those 7 weeks are like a fragile incubation for the new you that is going to be free of that Pharaoh that you're asking for help to be redeemed from slavery to that Pharaoh. During those 7 weeks, you're going to acknowledge, man, I'm not going to break free of this Pharaoh on my own. It's not going to happen overnight. I need help. But if I can just make it 24 hours more, Oh, no, I slipped. Okay, but I'm in my incubation period. Why did I slip? What happened today that I slipped back into that pattern? God, please help me avoid that trigger tomorrow. And for those whole 7 weeks of the Omer, you count those days. What you're really counting is each day of freedom from that behavior. And by the end of 7 weeks, you can be free of that Pharaoh. Was there another question?
Can you burn scented candles or oils for Seder? No. For the lights that you light for Shabbat or a holiday, they cannot be scented.
They cannot be scented. But otherwise, they can be any candle at all, which is interesting. We learned that this on AT Daily. We learned that in Tractate Shabbos, that for Shabbos candles or festival candles, all candles are okay. In the ancient world, there were many things that were not permitted to be used as the lamp or the candle because they didn't burn steadily. And the fear was that they would sputter and you would come to adjust the candle. And that's what you cannot do. Once you light that candle, you leave it. You leave it alone. That's especially true of the Shabbos candle, but it's true of the festival candle as well. Now, we can cook on the festival. That is unlike Shabbos. And this year, Nina, I know you must be very excited. We're having a 3-day Hag.
3-day Hag, a 3-day holiday.
Meaning Thursday, Friday, and Saturday all have the rules of Shabbat, except that on Thursday and Friday you can cook. But otherwise, our screens are going to be off, no phone calls, we don't turn light switches on and off.
Our teenagers, they just can't wait.
You know, and you're fully immersed in the holiday, and it's so, so beautiful. Now you can cook, but you want to light the stove from an existing flame, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's various rules. We're not experts. I don't want to be giving, halakhic.
Okay, if you have technical halakhic questions, ask your rabbi about that.
Leslie Ann Landsberg, great question. Do we light yahrzeit candles on Pesach? Definitely you do. I believe you light them. Okay, this, if anybody knows, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that you light it the first night right before you light the holiday candles. Yeah. There's also Yisker, which is at the end, but I think you do the yahrzeit in the beginning.
And that's a sadness, right? We're not going to have Yisker available on the second day of Pesach.
Kevin Raphael Spencer has a very interesting idea. Is the scented candle similar to the wrong fire lit by Aaron's sons? Very interesting theory why you can't have a scented candle.
I haven't researched that question, but I like that.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Do not bring strange fire on the altar, right? That's the...
Now, having said that, I remember years ago we were at a family reunion in Spain. You remember? And it was Shabbos, and we realized that we didn't have candles. And so we were in this town in Spain, and we had to go to the market and find candles. And the only candles we could find were scented candles. And in that case, we just thought, well, we didn't have a rabbi there. We figured it's probably just better to light them. So I don't know. But in general, no, you're not supposed to use scented.
I wonder if maybe it's because you don't want to do two things with one sign, right? And those candles, why do we have a commandment to light Shabbos candles? Is because of two commandments. You cannot light a fire on Shabbos, and you must enjoy Shabbos. So, lest you find yourself sitting in the dark on Shabbos, which would make it much less enjoyable, you want to have light, and you have to light that light before Shabbos comes in, when you would not be permitted to light a candle. And that's where Shabbos lights come from. And festival lights, similar. You're lighting it before the festival actually begins, right before it begins. But once you've lit it, so now the festival is on you.
Marilyn Gales has an interesting idea. Put a red ribbon or anything red on your door as a symbol. Maybe it will symbolize safety and God's protection. Everybody can do it. That's interesting. I don't know if you thought of that, Marilyn, or if that's a custom that some people have. But that's an interesting idea.
Now we're going to have to go.
Oh, Alejandro Martinez, is there any easy recipe to prepare horseradish for topping gefilte fish? I just get prepared horseradish, and then but for the Seder plate.
But for the Seder plate, you got a great fresh horseradish.
We have a radish.
It's so great.
Big, ugly-looking thing, and
Nina's very into spicy food. That's one kind of spice. I'm into horseradish.
I'm into pepper spice.
You're into pepper spice.
Radish spice.
I'm into radish spice.
Yeah.
Cleans out your sinuses. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, my friends. This has been fantastic. That is all the time that we have. We actually have a meeting that starts in 2 minutes.
Oh,
I mean, a phone meeting.
If you're reading this not live and you have a question, we'll be checking the comments.
Yeah, we'll check the
afterwards.
comments, and you can direct message us also if you have a question. I bless you all that you should have a unique and a uniquely meaningful and a uniquely transformative Seder, the best one that you've ever had. None of us have experienced a Seder like we're experiencing this year. We may well be on the eve of Mashiach. The whole world could be at the razor's edge of the final redemption. And it might only be waiting that enough Jews just commit one more mitzvah. Just one more mitzvah might take us over the top. It might be you. It might be you lighting on time. It might be you asking questions. It might be you saying the grace after the meals. It might be you transforming yourself. If you want to change the world, you change yourself, right? That change, breaking free of a Pharaoh this year might be just the one thing that puts the whole world over the top and brings Mashiach, brings the Messiah. May it happen in our days. May we celebrate Passover, all of us together in Jerusalem this year. And if not this year, then next year. And my friends, we're sending you all big love from the West Coast. And